Hello everyone, this is Misi Deshkulte and you're watching the ICOSA. Well, in this video we are going to talk about some basics of programming. Like, what exactly is programming? Well, as a beginner definition, programming is a set of instructions to solve a problem. Yes, that's it. Programming is actually a set of instructions to solve a problem. Okay, fine, if you haven't understood it, let me give you an example that what exactly is it all about. Well, let's say that I want to make a peanut butter sandwich. Okay, so now in this case, making the peanut butter sandwich is actually our problem, while the execution, for example, taking the peanut butter, then taking breads, applying the butter and making a sandwich, well, this execution is actually the solution of our problem. So that's all, it's simple. Making the peanut butter is actually our problem, and the execution of this problem, like doing the stuff, doing that thing to solve this problem, is actually what programming is all about. So, on the beginner level, programming actually has two subcategories. Okay, the first one is the developer, and the second one is the designer. Now, yes, there are many other things as well, but just on a basic scale, programming has two subcategories named as the developer and the designer. In the developer niche, there are two more subcategories, which is the front-end developer and the back-end developer. While in the designer niche, there are two other subcategories, which are the user experience and the visual designer. Now, before getting to the root, let me just tell you that what exactly a developer does and a designer does. Well, a developer is actually the one who writes the code, who writes the functions. Like, let's say I want to make an app. So, and if I'm the developer, I'll actually write the code, while the designer will guide me that what should be the way I should write my code. Like, let's say that I want a heading over here, and let's say I want some text over here, some images over here in my website. So that's this designing is actually done by the designer, while its execution, its proper code is actually written by the developer. So it's like that the developer and the designer both have to work on par with each other to maintain the equilibrium. Okay, and now coming to the front end and the back end. Well, what exactly is the front end and the back end? Well, the front end developer actually is the one who writes the front end code. Okay, now don't get confused with the web designer and the front end developer, because the designer is the one who designs what should be there and what shouldn't be there, while the front end developer actually brings that to life. Okay, then you might ask me that, hey Siddesh, then what's the use of this back-end developer? What does he do? Well, exactly, the back-end developer is actually the soul, you can say. The front-end developer actually just designs the layer, or let's say the surface of the, let's say, an application or maybe a website, but the back-end developer is the one who actually makes it like alive. Let's say that if your website is having a function which says that, hey, give me your email address or something like a download link, well, this process is actually, let's say, like performed by the backend developer. So it's like the front end developer actually designs what should be there according to the designer, and the backend developer like makes the code alive. Okay, now coming to the designer part, we have the user experience manager and the visual designer. Now these terms may look a bit same, but they are different in their own way. Okay, so just to avoid a confusion, I'm going to take some short steps. Like, I'm just going to give some short definition about these two. Well, the user experience manager is the one who manages the experience of, let's say, an application or maybe a website or something like that. Like, if a user comes to a website, what he would love to do first. Like, let's say that he would love to see a heading with a huge title, good font size, and maybe an image at the background and a button to click and this and that. Well, this is actually known as the user experience, which is managed by the user experience manager. And the visual designer helps the user experience manager design the, let's say, the application or the project. Okay, so you might have a question that what exactly is the process of development of an application, let's say, for example. So what is the process to make an application? So the thing is that it all starts with the user experience. It is that a company actually collects reviews from its clients, let's say, that what exactly do you want in an application? Do you want a button? Do you want a heading? Do you want this function, that function, and etc. So these details are actually collected by the user experience manager, and then these details are transferred, or let's say forwarded, to an information architecture manager. Okay, now getting into the depth, let me just tell you that what exactly information architecture manager, or let's say in short IAM, does. Well, he's the one who structures the, let's say, the program. Okay, so he's the one who structures the program. Like, as I said, first should be the heading, then second the text, the third is a, let's say, an image, the fourth should be a paragraph and all that stuff. Okay, so this is actually done by the IAM, but it is not actually done visually, it is done graphically, or yeah, something like that. It is a graph, not exactly like a map, you can say. Yeah, like something's like a mind map. It's similar to that. So it's like let's say he designs something into boxes. Like, let's say a user comes in, he clicks a button, and what happens next is he goes to the next page of a website. So this next page is actually designed by the IAM. It's not the function which I am saying, it's actually the link I am saying. Like, from this thing he goes to this thing, from, let's say, from point A to point B, and then from point B maybe to point C. So this architecture is actually designed by the information architecture manager, and later this architecture is actually forwarded to the visual designer, who visualizes architecture and brings things to life. Well, not exactly to life, but just on a piece of page let's say he makes a rough diagram that what exactly things are going to look and where are these things actually going to go. So these things are done by the visual designer, and then lastly the development process starts, in which programming comes in. So that's actually the stage. Yeah, it's the final stage, but it's actually the stage where programming actually starts. It has to go through 3 steps to get done. So that was all, and now let's move to some vocabs. Wireframes. Well, what exactly is wireframes? Well, wireframes are visual guide that presents the skeletal framework of a website or maybe a program. They are immensely helpful for communicating ideas to developers so they can literally see what they are building. Okay, so it's like something of a rough diagram, let's say. So that's a wireframe. Okay, now in wireframe there are actually 2 categories: the low fidelity wireframe and the high fidelity wireframes. Well, the low fidelity wireframes are actually just a rough sketch of what is going to be developed. Let's say maybe a diagram or something, while the high fidelity wireframes are something of higher, let's say, customization. Like, a low fidelity wireframe won't have things like a customized button with colors and fonts, but a high fidelity wireframe on the same hand will have these customizations. So it's like the low fidelity wireframe is the skeleton, and the high fidelity wireframe is actually the flesh on that skeleton. So that actually makes the difference between these 2. So the next vocab is vector. Well, in programming, a vector is either a pointer or an array with only one dimension. In graphics, the term vector describes a line with starting point and an ending point. So these are actually the two definitions of vector. The first one was for programming, while the second one was for designing. These two work different for each other. Next we have the raster. A raster is a grid of x and y coordinates on a display space. A raster image identifies which of these coordinates to eliminate and monochrome or color values. Okay, so the next thing which we have is PPI and DPI. Well, don't mix this up, these are actually two different terms. The PPI actually stands for pixels per inch, which is a measurement of pixel density, or in simpler terms, resolution of an electronic image device. For example, it may be a computer, a TV display, image scanner, etc. While dots per inch technically means printer dots per inch, which is DPI. So these terms are actually different than each other, so just don't combine them. So that was all for this lecture. If you learned something new, hit that like button, and if you're new to my channel, hit that subscribe button as well. I don't care if you throw a sausage on it or hit it or kiss it, just I want that thing to be clicked. Alright, so that was all for this lecture. See you in the next one.